Alrighty, so it's 9 a.m. and I wanted to check in on this project really quickly, recording wise, because I have no idea how long all of these clips are going to sit in editing softwares before I actually start utilizing them. But I started with prompt 6. It's kind of a habit in my life. I always start with the last bit first. Even on exams in my college courses, I'm like, yeah, problem 1? No, I'm starting on problem 50. It's a weird habit of mine. So this is for prompt 6. And where the last clip left off, I was having a mini breakdown over the hands. Ultimately, I had to just turn off the recording so I could take reference photos with my phone, because that's what I record with. You guys are seeing the world through my phone. I needed to take reference photos of my own hands together and really just sit there and put my face to the paper. There are just times where I need to be in the drawing to get things how I want. So I basically just stepped away for a minute, took some reference photos, and I finally got the hands how I wanted them. They took me forever, but basically, before I even line this, my intentions are this lady 100% is going to be see-through. I am hoping that I don't feel like he needs some reflection in the mirror. She's going to be see-through. She's one of the ghosts. And I haven't decided which one. I'm thinking this one more. But one of these will be a ghost. And the other will be solid. Because it is ghostly ballroom or something like that. The prompt. I'll have put it on screen or something. So I do want there to be other solid people. But I also don't really want them to take up a lot of the frame. I really want this to be the main focus, and this to be the main focus, and then the implications of other people. I think it made more sense with my original concept design to have no one in the frame, having him right in this corner as opposed to it moved over. So it made less sense here, but I did want the implications of this actually being a ball to be there. And then as for the background, I know it looks really plain right now. I'm pretty 50-50 at the moment. I'm mostly thinking that I'm going to do a kind of Victorian floral wallpaper. And I don't really think I need to render that in pencil, or I think that's going to be a free ball kind of thing. Just go for it and hope. But I'm also thinking, just because when I was actually looking up Victorian ballrooms, I was seeing a lot of I don't know how to describe it, but huge blocky trim. I don't even want to call it trim because it's the corner of the room, but it would come out and there are these huge blocky kind of support looking ornamental. And so I am thinking of adding a really bougie trim here. Or maybe a tapestry. I was seeing a lot of curtains, velvety curtains that just look like they don't do anything except exist as a velvety curtain. So I am thinking maybe adding a curtain just pinned up, because they were just basically bunched up and then draping. But I don't think if you furred them out, they'd actually cover anything. So ultimately, I am very on the fence about my background. I'm also on the fence about my flooring. I'm not sure if I want to make it look like a fancy bougie tile. And I'm mostly not sure about that because I'm scared of screwing up the perspective and having it really take away from the illustration, because I actually didn't think about it beyond this having enough of an angle that it makes sense. That's kind of all I thought about. Ignoring my OCs for a second, the process of lining this project was very conflicting, generally speaking. I had done 2 painting projects for Drawtober before this, and I was very uncertain of how I felt about maybe painting this one. So after I finished the line work, I just decided I wasn't in the headspace to color it traditionally. I did some digital ones for Drawtober as well this year, and so I scanned it like I did with my Eris illustration and decided to color it digitally. That way I didn't have to worry about the feeling of like ruining one of my Drawtober illustrations and then not really being able to fix it. I had big aspirations for this piece in a traditional front, and I just don't have the time this October to work on it, and the time constraints of Drawtober, it just wasn't going to work for me with college and my job. So I decided to go digital and then maybe save the line art for another time. I also don't know about my gray pen actually working with markers. I thought it did, but I think it bled a little bit when working on Thanatos, which was my first Drawtober piece this year. And I just don't trust it. So I also was a little bit worried about that because I had lined this one first, drawn and lined it first. I didn't know about that when I did it. I found out on Thanatos, which came second technically in my time span of drawing it. I just colored this piece. It's the 30th right now. I'm not done coloring it yet. I'm making my voiceover before I'm even done coloring it, because I am actually really happy with where it's at coloring wise. I'm going to finish it tonight. I just don't have time to edit it in time for tomorrow, so there's that. But I am actually really happy with how this piece is going. And it was a very fun and positive experience for me personally to actually go through the process of really trying to detail a piece with so many different colors on a digital scan. I don't really think I did it the way I was supposed to. I am not sure that I was supposed to need to use all of these multiply layers, but I did have a very interesting time. I do want to try and figure out a more efficient way of doing this because I really do love the traditional line art process and I like keeping my traditional line art. And I always get really sad when I have to part with it and color it and I don't get to preserve that. Like when you work digitally, you just do it on a different layer, and so you get to keep it if you have an art style like mine, I mean. So I am always a little bit sad when I have to say goodbye to my traditional line art because I really like it and I'm generally really proud of my line art. I'm actually less confident in my coloring skills than my line art abilities, so I wish I could keep it more often, and this feels like a good kind of midway in the meantime, or at least I could preserve a little bit more of my all-time favorite line art this way until I have the means of being able to print on like sturdy paper. My printer can't handle it at the moment, so that I can keep the original or keep a copy that looks good. For now, I just don't really know how to do that. My printer has horrible scans, but if you have tips for that, let me know. Let me know down below. I'm always into it. But I put a lot of time in this project, digitally speaking, to trying to make her look transparent-ish, glowy, and separate from the mirror. That was the hardest part of conveying it, actually. And I'm really glad I ended up getting to do this digitally because I don't really know that I would have pulled this off as effectively in an illustration. I think I need to practice this a lot traditionally. I might do an entire sketchbook spread of me trying to render mirrors so that I can try and actually do this on paper, but I'm really glad I did end up doing this digitally. I didn't actually get confronted with the mirror texture until partway through. I started with the wall. I really spent a lot of time experimenting and playing with the background color for the wall. Had a few crises over pen textures. The multiply layer thing was really getting to me. I kept forgetting I needed to multiply my layer so it wouldn't destroy my line art and cover it up completely, and it was just really putting me off. It was a huge hurdle in this, but I am overall very, very happy with how it turned out. I really, after rendering the coat and the wall, I was really convinced that this was going to be my worst piece for Drawtober. 100%, no questions asked. I really thought that I did not have the technical skills that I needed to pull off the concepts I was working with. I have very minimal experience with reflective surfaces and making things see-through, even digitally, so I actually am really satisfied with how this turned out. I think that in retrospect, my weakest point is actually the perspective. There's not a whole lot of perspective, but I did try and make the wall look like it was going a little bit back, and I think my mirror is at too drastic or sharp of an angle. Like, I think if I were to have done this digitally and I flipped the canvas, the mirror would look like it was tilted. So I actually think that my traditional part was my weakest part, when I really did expect the coloring to be my downfall in this illustration. So I'm ultimately very, very happy with how things turned out. Ultimately, I did not love the shoes on this piece. I do like them in retrospect. I think they fit the actual illustration. But I wish that I had chosen a bit more of a faux leather, like a faux brown leather sort of feel. Maybe like a softer brown instead of this more burgundy red that I chose. I feel like Vivian wears clothing that is a bit out of date or a bit, I guess, like questionable in fashion. He wears kind of old shoes, more tattered shoes. I didn't feel like putting patches on them. Very much from the time period where you still fixed up your stuff, where you repaired everything and you never bought anything new because you had to get it tailor-made still. So the brown the brown cuffs on his pants are like a sewing repair, or him getting too tall for his slacks. and adding a bit of an extension but not having the right color. So the patch on his jacket. Very much a time where we still put more effort into repairing our clothing and caring for our clothing than we do now. So I don't think I really did his shoes much justice, but that's okay. I'll work on it in the future. I don't draw him as much as I like to, and I especially don't draw his shoes. So generally, it's just something that I need to work on in the future. The mirror texture was another thing that I was conflicted on. I wanted to do a brassy goldy mirror, but it just felt like it would be too gaudish. Gaudy? A bit too out there, punchy for the actual kind of scene that I was creating. Because it's a dance with the dead, and because Vivian's lover passed so long ago, I don't really want it to feel like a new item. And while gold might have been a little bit more fancy and bougie at this time, I wanted to be able to depict a bit more rusty texture and add texture to the mirror. So I went over in a textured brush, made sure that there was a bit of a gritty feeling to it, or at least I tried to make it so that it didn't look well polished and shiny, while reflective, not completely shiny. Then I went in and I started adding some more firm shadows to the overall feeling of the clothing and stuff, refining the light that's helping pull her from the mirror and casting that kind of shadowy, watery kind of texture, not actual water, but a little bit more of that indication of her coming out of the mirror, physically leaving it, as opposed to the kind of idea that she is simply a thing existing inside of the mirror. I don't know if that makes sense wording-wise, but that was another one of my huge goals in making more light come off of her. So she's now sticking out of the mirror, and so that overhead light that's casting on his face and bouncing off of the mirror, she's glowing a little bit. Very much a warm way of centralizing the piece more so on their faces and where they're coming together. It's not the focal point. They are the focal point. Their interaction, him guiding her out, is what I want people to focus on. So I put a lot more effort into the details there, the reflection, the light. So I'm still stuck on the floor texture. I'm not entirely sure how I even want to maybe go about this. I have my tea. I have hair on my screen. I'm not having a good time. I could just do fake texture, or I can go for a highly reflective surface. But when I inked this traditionally, I created this shadow right here. I don't really know how well that'll work. I need to figure out what dress color I want for this one right here as well. But I'm not liking the chocolate milk color under the ghost dress, so that gray's not giving any life. But maybe this blue gray? I feel like ballrooms are white or really soft grays, so maybe just that does not look good. Now that the wind is nice and loud, I'm gonna play with this for a while. I will come back when I have stopped wanting to have a breakdown over this flooring. So I will see you. aware that this video is coming a little bit late, but I'm finishing my voiceover on the 31st, so happy belated late Halloween. I hope that you all had fun costumes, fun celebrations if you did anything. My cats are getting dressed up later today and I'm super excited for it, but that's an aside. So my goal with the flooring, now that I actually have the flooring how I want it, is to make that sort of marbly, shiny floor feeling to it. And the best way I thought to do that would be to just copy, paste, and flip, or copy and flip the wall pattern texture that I had going on, and using that to just apply some like layer effects to it to try and make it look like it was shiny, like shining onto the floor. When I pulled up some like reference photos of what shiny checkered floors looked like, they were only really showing up on the dark tiles but not the white tiles. So I spent a good amount of time playing around trying to make this look how I want it to, and it's not bad, but I don't know that I necessarily captured the effect quite how I was hoping to. I think I was a little bit ambitious or confused. I had a hard time figuring out how to make a realistic looking shiny reflection. I put a lot of time into just playing around with different kind of like layer effects, opacities, applying some different textures, some glow brushes to it, and it's fine. I'm happy with how it turned out, and the effect looks realistic enough that I don't think it's too eye-catching or really pulls you out of the moment of looking at the piece. I don't think it really does anything that's particularly disruptive, but it definitely isn't something that I've mastered, and I learned a lot playing with it. I do recommend the experience of playing around and trying something new like this because it was actually really, really fun trying to do this. Like, it was very odd, but I had a great time exploring this weird world of reflective kind of floor textures. I know that doesn't sound like something that would be fun, but it was a very challenging thing to try and do for the first time. Like a lot of things in this piece, I had a lot of artistic first in this illustration, which I wasn't expecting when I did the line art, really, and when I was thinking of the concept, I wasn't expecting to have so many artistic first times where I was just trying something that I've never actually done before, digitally or traditionally. I do want to try doing this traditionally sometime just because it feels like a good, like, brain exercise. Maybe that sounds a bit weird, but I'm actually quite excited to experiment with this more and maybe do a few more ballrooms, especially since this is something I kind of want to be annual. Not Drawtober necessarily being annual. I do hope to be able to participate next year, but we'll see where the cards fall, of course. But I mean, like, my OC Vivian's kind of experience dancing with the dead, reuniting with his past lover for a dance. I want to treat that as something that happens every several years or so, or like some sort of ritual every 50 years. It's an opportunity or something like that. I want to play with that idea a bit more and be able to bring his past lover into his story a bit more and flesh out her character, because I do feel like as a past lover and a supporter of the experiment that got him in this position, I really should think about her actual impacts on him as a character a little bit more and seek to pursue a further elaboration of that brief life they had together. So it is something I need to do eventually, and I think this was a good starting point to getting to kind of play with her as an idea a little bit more. And she's pretty, she's pretty and she's fun. And she is the former lover of a mad scientist, and she was into it the whole time. So she's definitely the type of female character that, like, I would totally love to explore and, like, learn about. I went through and I added some more highlights and vibrancy to them. I just wanted them to glow. I wanted not only for the light to be just on them for the sake of focal pointing, but I also kind of wanted them to be glowing, like the way they describe it when you're like in love and stuff like that. I wanted them to look vibrant and radiant with this kind of excitement to get to reunite. And the flush on Vivian with the overlay layers I was doing ended up looking so beet red and good. I'm in love, really. It's been just such a fun project to get to work on, and it's very fun to get to show him in a more positive light. Not that he's usually in a negative kind of perception for people to look at, but it's very nice to get to see Vivian having a positive time and a positive experience. He is definitely one of my more tragic OCs, and he definitely doesn't get to have a whole lot of happy experiences like this. He's a little outdated, not really keeping up with the times aside from the scientific times, and he gets into a bit of shenanigans because of it. Yeah, he's fun. He's definitely going to be the source the more I get to draw him. And the more I pursue drawing him, of memes and jokes and mockeries of them old-timey people who didn't really grow up with the times, because that is Vivian. That's Vivian's entire life, is just not adapting well to technology and stuff like that. So one of the fun things of Vivian as a character is just the source of so many Zoomer type jokes. I think Zoomer's the right word. Boomer? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not good with that type of stuff. It's not something I'm particularly on top of, despite my technical speaking youth. So, yeah. Ultimately, I went for a very deep blue for the final character. She was the actual last thing to draw. Not that she's particularly in frame, but I was having a really hard time thinking of a good color that'll match the deep, deep reds and the vibrant green of his coat. And because I went with a yellowy, orangey highlight, I did think a deep blue would work well. I considered a royal purple, but it just wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. So, yeah. I settled for blue instead of purple just because I didn't want them to draw too much attention. She's not the character that I really want to focus on here. So there was that in regards to the dress, the final touches of the illustration. But ultimately, we're coming to the end of my recording here. I finished my voiceover in time to edit the video. I was actually getting worried I might not hit my Thursday deadline either. So overall, I really, really appreciate you guys sitting through the entirety of this video. I had a wonderful time exploring my OC a little bit more and getting to play with these prompts. If you want to see Drawtober done by me next year, please let me know down below, or engage in the rest of my Drawtober videos, because I do want to do stuff that appeals to my audience. And if Drawtober was not fun, I could do it privately and not post about it. You know what I mean? So if you liked my Drawtober content, you want more Drawtober content from me next year, let me know. If you have questions about my OC, I love to talk about them. So yes, I have a video on Eris, and I do want to have full videos where I talk about them and their backstories a little bit more sometime soon. But ultimately, like if you like, dislike if you dislike, subscribe, share if you want to, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are. So, bye-bye.